Hi, you're on the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. We're here every Sunday night from 8 till 10 p.m. Eastern Time. If you'd like to get in on the discussion, you can just tune in to the Bible Forum at gmail.com. If you'd like to hear or see what the topics are going to be in advance, send me an email. Send it to the Bible Forum at gmail.com. I won't send you any other stuff. There's no give me money, any of those sorts of things. I just send out a topic list every week, and if something unique comes up that's going to impact the program, I will alert you of that as well. Every Sunday night, we start off with a rundown of the topics that made the news this week, things that I thought were significant in a religious sort of way, but also politically. We're being told that politics and religion don't mix, but it's clear that they most certainly do. The pastor of the Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church has known the Biden family for almost 30 years, he says, and he was invited by now President Joe Biden to speak at his inauguration. Reverend Beeman is confident that President Biden will seek after the heart of God. How does he know that? He knows because that's been, according to him, President Biden's lifestyle over the years. He believes this is God's opportunity to cover the nation in grace. Now, how is it that politicians love to cover themselves in God, grace, when seeking office, but not so much in governing? Well, it's all about image, and it's courting favor with the enemy. Enemy? Yeah, Christians. Christians? Yeah. Christians are notorious for wanting their leaders to be honest, upright, and true. There are very few politicians who can make that claim. That Joe Biden has a mouth that isn't sanctified, a value system that does not reflect biblical principle, a character that is not honest and true, and a social life that includes dating another man's wife. None of that seems to matter. Only that when needed, he's a good Catholic. And a black Protestant pastor is willing to stand before the world and say so. According to the Daily Wire, Biden press secretary Jen Psaki was criticized by pro-lifers on social media for dodging a question about the president's abortion views by simply pointing to the fact that he is Catholic. Now keep in mind, he's a Roman Catholic. He's not just a Catholic. There are at least three different kinds. Then she spins out of the Hyde Amendment and Mexico City question by saying President Biden is a devout Catholic. With this, Cassie Smiley, executive director of America Rising, tweets, either President Biden is about to be a very pro-life president, or Jen Psaki, and basically everybody else, needs to stop referring to him as a devout Catholic. In a post by NPR correspondent Sarah McGammon, she argued that Biden will likely overturn the Mexico City policy. Now, the Mexico City policy blocks U.S. federal funding for non-governmental organizations, call them NGOs, organizations that provide abortion counseling or referrals, advocate to decriminalize abortion or expand abortion services. Fauci says President Biden will be revoking the Mexico City policy in the coming days as part of his broader commitment to protect women's health and advance gender equality at home and around the world. This according to the U.S. Department of Health and Social Services. It's no surprise the policy first instituted by Reagan has been ping-ponging on and off depending on which party holds the White House. Reversing it, McGammon says, is the kind of action abortion rights advocates are expecting Biden to take, and to take soon. The Biden administration is granting amnesty to anyone who can prove they've been living in the United States illegally on or before January 1st, 2021. Of course, Congress has to pass the bill, but that might not be a problem. Thousands are already on the march to the United States from about every Central American country there is. We haven't heard what our government will now do with them should they get here. Guatemala is a serious deterrent, as is Mexico now. Will that change with the Biden administration? One English-speaking Honduran told CNN that President Biden is giving them 100 days to get here. And once here, he will give us legal asylum papers so we can have a better life for our kids and family. I heard this week that the Biden administration is opening the doors to all of the buildings down there that are housing immigrants, people who have crashed the gate without papers, and he's just turning them loose. I don't know if that's true or not. It seems a little silly to me and dangerous. Some of those are children. ChristianHeadlines.com is telling us that 88% of Congress are Christians. Does anybody believe that? Do we have a Christian Congress? Pew Research says 88% are professing Christians. But what does that mean? Well, the Pew Research report is entitled Faith on the Hill, and it analyzed the religious affiliation of the 117th Congress, which at the time of publication was 531 members. The study also offered a comparison between Congress members and the religious demographics of U.S. adults. Pew found that 88% of 468 Congress members were Christians, compared to 65% of the general American public. Additionally, 55% of lawmakers in the 117th Congress identify as Protestant, whereas 43% of American public described themselves likewise at that time. Congress is also found to be more heavily Catholic. Now, they mean Roman Catholic. They don't say it that way. They try to make you believe that there's only one Catholic religion, but there are three. That Roman Catholics are more than overall, found to be more heavily Catholic. Okay. The Congress is more heavily Catholic than the overall U.S. population, 30% to 20%. Conversely, Baptists in the 117th Congress, 12.4%, are less than the American public, 15% of Americans who are Baptists. Additional Protestant denominations among members of Congress include Methodists, there are 35 members, Anglicans/Episcopalians, they're in the same category, 26 members, Presbyterians, 24, Lutherans, 22, and non-denominational Protestants number 12. Apart from non-denominational Protestants, all of the above-mentioned denominations have increased representation in Congress, more so than the general public across the nation. 20% of the U.S. population is professing to be Catholic, while Congress has 158 Catholics, equating to 29.8%. Keep in mind, Biden's a Catholic. So is Nancy Pelosi. Other religious affiliations, along with other Protestant denominations with less than 1% on Capitol Hill, include something called Restorationists. There is 0.8% of those. Congregationalists, 0.6%. Muslims, 0.6%. Unitarian Universalists at 6.6%. Pentecostals at 0.4%. Adventists, 0.4%. Hindus, 0.4%. Buddhists, 0.4%. Reformed, 0.2%. And Pietists, 0.2%. According to the Christian Post, the number of Christians in the 117th Congress has declined from the 116th Congress. The number of Protestants has increased by 1, while the unspecified other Protestants have increased by 16, and Restorationists plus 3. On the other hand, Methodists are down 7, Baptists are down 6, Lutherans are down 4. That's a significant decrease from the previous Congress. The Pew Research report was published on January 3rd, a day after the 117th Congress was sworn into session. What does it all mean? It means that our government is becoming less religious. I'm sorry, I'll rephrase that. They're becoming more religious, less Christian. Judicial Watch has an article this week that I wanted to share with you. They start off by saying, who said, quote, the third lesson and tip actually comes from two of my favorite political philosophers, Mao Zedong and Mother Teresa, not often coupled with each other, but the two people I turn to most to basically deliver a simple point, which is, you're going to make choices. You're going to challenge. You're going to say, why not? You're going to figure out how to do things that have never been done before. Who said that? Well, it turns out it was Anita Dunn. So who's Anita Dunn? You've heard the name. Anita Dunn was the White House Communications Director for President Obama. A woman who was so far left politically that she was forced to resign. Why? She was caught publicly praising Chinese Communist leader Mao Zedong, a man who's responsible for killing tens of millions of his own people as supreme leader. Who did she say this to? It turns out it occurred at a high school commencement address in Washington, D.C., while she was employed by the American people. Not quoting something Chairman Mao said that was terribly wrong or controversial, simply that all the people in the world and in history, of all the people in the world in history, she chose a communist mass murder to praise in the presence and hearing of young Americans. It's now clear that her political party leaders did not share her critics' ideals. Her ouster was political. It served to calm a significant majority of Americans, people like you and me, demonstrating that the Obama administration was sensitive to our treasured ideals, only they weren't. Evidence her return. She is now President Biden's presidential campaign advisor, co-chair of the Biden-Harris transition team. She's been in charge of messaging, debate preparation, and overall strategy. President Biden says his appointments will strengthen our administration's ability to convey information to the American people and be integral in our team's efforts to build our nation back better. But this is a woman characterized as a dedicated public servant, one that will help deliver our commitment to contain the coronavirus pandemic, create an economy that works for working people, rebuild our country in a way that lifts up all Americans. I wonder if she knows people like her in China were considered enemies of the state and publicly humiliated, beaten, and or murdered by one of her favorite political philosophers. And why did he do it? For control. According to the Wall Street Journal, Mr. Biden has said he plans to make a priority of passing a law against domestic terrorism. He's been urged to create a White House post overseeing the fight against ideologically inspired violent extremists and increasing funding to combat them. What liberties will he sacrifice? And what's the difference between ideologically inspired violence and the regular kind? Did you know that Biden has often boasted about being the original author of the U.S. Patriot Act? The first draft of the civil rights eroding U.S. Patriot Act was magically introduced 1 week after the 9/11 attacks. Legislators later admitted that they hadn't even had time to read through the hundreds of pages of the history-shaping bill before passing it the next month. And yet somehow its authors were able to gather all the necessary information and write the whole thing in a week. Interesting. That's because most of the work had already been done. CNET is reporting that in 2008, months before the Oklahoma City bombing took place, then Senator Joe Biden introduced another bill called the Omnibus Counterterrorism Act of 1995. The Center for National Security Studies said that bill would erode what they called constitutional and statutory due process protections and would authorize the Justice Department to pick and choose crimes to investigate and prosecute based on political beliefs and associations. So Biden's bill was never put to a vote. Civil libertarians were staunchly opposed, but after 9/11, then Attorney General John Ashcroft reportedly credited his bill with the foundations of the USA Patriot Act. A bill the Center for National Security Studies says would erode constitutional and statutory due process protections, along with other things. CIA analyst turned House Representative Alyssa Slotkin believes, quote, the single greatest national security threat right now is our internal division, the threat of domestic terrorism, the polarization that threatens our democracy. If we don't reconnect our two Americas, the threats will not have to come from the outside. Along with all of this comes Google's censorship of Twitter accounts. President Trump's account's been shut down, as well as others. The program called Parler has been removed. Its app store, their app store, no longer carries it. Observers expect Apple to follow suit. All of this is happening just in time for the Biden administration, about which there has already been grave concerns raised regarding the future of internet censorship. The censorship of a political faction at the hands of a few liberal Silicon Valley billionaires will do the exact opposite of eliminating right-wing paranoia and conspiracy theories, and everybody with half a brain knows that. So you see, they're not trying to make things better. They're actually trying to make them worse. They know this will make it worse. They're not trying to restore peace and order. They're trying to force a confrontation so their political enemies can be crushed. They're accelerationists. They're not a curb on dangerous speech. Do they know this? Of course they do. ChristianHeadlines.com. President-elect Joe Biden plans to reverse some of Trump's pro-life policies in the first 100 days of his presidency. That's not news. According to NBC News, the rollback includes rescinding the Mexico City policy, which prevents international organizations receiving U.S. taxpayer dollars from sponsoring abortions. Additionally, money from the Title X program will be restored to abortion clinics, such as the nation's largest abortion provider, Planned Parenthood. Biden had previously supported the Hyde Amendment, which bans government-funded abortions. Now, he plans to repeal the Hyde Amendment. It started about the time he was thinking about running for president. It's probably a core value, right? No. The Hyde Amendment is characterized by liberals as an attack on low-income families and an attempt to take away the promise of Roe v. Wade. Biden also seeks to bring back the Affordable Care Act's Obama-era contraceptive coverage mandate, one that requires employers, even pro-life employers, to cover birth control under health insurance policies. All this just when the abortion mills were slowly going away. And then from the Federalist.com, Virginia passed some new laws recently, laws that mandate school boards adopt newly developed policies, including treatment of transgender students in public elementary and secondary schools. Virginia's model policies, they call it, drafted with input by various educational professionals, and students include, as the Prince William Manassas Family Alliance notes, failure to use a transgender student's preferred pronoun could subject teachers and students to disciplinary action. Schools should help students make decisions about gender identity without parents being informed. Students should be allowed to use the same changing facilities or overnight accommodations as those of a different biological sex, they mean gender, identity. To do so would not require any substantiating evidence or that of such identity has been asserted for any required duration. Meaning you could walk up and say, I think I'm a girl, you have to let me into their party. School staff is warned not to mention anyone entering a restroom. Can't stop the boys from going in. School staff may need to report parents if students are abused or neglected, or at risk of abuse or neglect, whatever that means. If they're being non-supportive of a child's assertion of gender identity different than their gender at birth, that's now abuse. The staff of advocacy groups Equality Virginia and Side by Side claim the policies are what is best for them, the students, and for their families. All 25 of them. Or is it 100 transgender students? Or is it progressive and or easily influenced parents who are emotionally unsettled? DNA and body parts dictate gender, always have, always will. Not law, not social policy, not emotion. All this is the result of allowing the psychological community to influence our society, our family structure, our individual psyches. We let these counselors into our school system. And this is the kind of stuff we get.